She slid a manila envelope across the dinner table and told me to sign it before dessert arrived. I did not raise my voice. I did not knock the envelope to the floor. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and looked at my son, sitting 3 seats away. He was studying the tablecloth like it contained the answers to questions nobody had asked him. That was the moment I understood everything. My name is Robert Harmon. I am 68 years old. I built a civil engineering firm from a desk in my spare bedroom and a used truck that I had to jumpstart every morning for 2 winters. I worked 6 days a week for 31 years. I missed baseball games and school plays, and one Thanksgiving because a bridge project in Ohio needed somebody on site. My wife, Carol, never once complained. She kept the house running and raised our son with more patience than any one person should be required to have. She died 4 years ago, 11 months after her diagnosis, and she did it with the same quiet dignity she brought to everything else in her life. I still have her reading glasses on the nightstand. I have not moved them. My son's name is Derek. He is 39 years old. He works in corporate finance at a firm downtown, earns a comfortable salary, and lives in a condo I purchased as an investment property and have been renting to him for $800 a month below market rate since he was 32. I made that arrangement because I wanted him close after his mother passed. I told myself it was practical. The truth is, I was lonely in a way I did not know how to describe out loud. My daughter-in-law's name is Angela. She is 36. She has a law degree from a school she mentions within the first 10 minutes of meeting anyone for the first time. She is sharp, organized, and relentless. And if she had directed those qualities toward anything other than extracting my assets, I might have genuinely admired her. She and Derek had been married for 3 years when that envelope arrived on my dinner table. The evening had started pleasantly enough. They came over on a Saturday, which was unusual. Derek almost never came on Saturdays. Angela had suggested it, he told me over the phone, because she wanted to celebrate my upcoming retirement from the firm's board. I was stepping down from my last formal role in 2 months. I had been looking forward to it. Mornings with coffee and no agenda. Longer drives along the coast. Maybe finally learning to cook something other than scrambled eggs. I made a reservation at a restaurant Carol and I had loved. Good food, quiet tables, the kind of place where the waitstaff refills your water without being asked. We had a corner booth. The 3 of us ordered, and for the first 45 minutes the conversation was unremarkable. Derek talked about a deal he was working on. Angela mentioned a case her firm had settled. I talked about the drive I had taken up to the lake house the previous weekend, how the water was so still in the morning that the tree line reflected perfectly. Then the appetizers were cleared, and Angela reached into the bag beside her and placed the envelope on the table. She said she wanted to handle something practical while we were all together. She said she had drawn up a property transfer agreement for the lake house. She said it made more financial sense for the property to be in their names before I fully retired for tax purposes, and that she had already spoken to an accountant who agreed. She pushed the envelope toward me and said there was a pen inside. I looked at Derek. He looked at the tablecloth. I looked back at Angela. I said, "I'm not signing that tonight." She smiled the way people smile when they have already decided the conversation is going to go their way. She said she understood it was sudden, but that she had done all the research and the timing was genuinely important. She said the tax window was narrow. She said Carol would have wanted the family to be smart about these things. She used Carol's name. Something happened in my chest when she said that. Not anger. Exactly. Something quieter and colder than anger. I said, "Do not bring my wife into this conversation." Angela said she meant no disrespect. She was simply pointing out that Carol had always been practical about financial planning, and surely I could see the logic in what she was proposing. Derek still had not looked up. I set my water glass down very carefully. I said, "Derek, I would like to hear from you." He finally raised his eyes. I said, "Dad, she's right that the tax situation is something to think about." I asked him if he had read the document before tonight. He said he had looked it over. Yes. I asked him when he had planned to mention it to me. He said Angela had handled the details, and he trusted her judgment on these things. I nodded slowly. I picked up the envelope put it in the inside pocket of my jacket, told them I would have my attorney review it, and asked if we could please order the main course. Angela's smile tightened by several degrees. She said her work was thorough and there was really nothing for an attorney to find. I said, "Then there's nothing to worry about." The rest of the dinner was very polite and completely hollow. I drove home alone. I sat in my driveway for a few minutes before going inside. The house was dark except for the porch light. And in that particular darkness, it felt very large and very empty in the way it always does when I have been reminded that Carol is gone. I went inside, made a cup of tea I did not drink, and sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of me. I opened it. Angela had drafted a full transfer of the lake house, the investment property where Derek and she were living, and a parcel of commercial land I owned outside the city. The total value was approximately $2.4 million. The document was thorough. It was also, in 3 specific places, deliberately misleading about the terms. She had structured it so that my ability to contest the transfer after signing would have been severely limited. I am not a lawyer, but I have been signing contracts for 31 years. I know what something looks like when it is designed to close a door behind you. I put the document back in the envelope and went to bed. I did not sleep well, but I did not need to. I had already decided what I needed to do. The following Monday morning, I called a man named Philip. Philip is an estate attorney who had handled Carol's affairs and had been my personal attorney for over 20 years. I told him I needed to see him as soon as possible. He had an opening that afternoon. I drove downtown and sat in his office and placed the envelope on his desk. Philip read the document without speaking. When he finished, he set it down and looked at me over his glasses. He said, "You didn't sign this." I said I had not. He said, "We talked for 2 hours. By the time I left his office, I had set 2 things in motion. The first was a comprehensive review of every financial arrangement I had with Derek and Angela. The below-market rent, the car lease I had been co-signing, the monthly transfer I sent to a joint account that had started as help during a rough patch in the first year of their marriage and had never stopped. Philip was going to document all of it. The second was an update to my estate plan. Not a reaction, a correction. Something I should have done years earlier, when Carol was still alive, and we had talked about it but never quite finished. I did not call Derek. I did not confront Angela. I went home and I took a long drive up the coast and I had lunch by myself at a diner where nobody knew me, and I ordered the fish and chips and read the newspaper and felt, for the first time in a long while, genuinely clear-headed. 3 weeks passed. Derek called twice. Both times the conversation was surface level. He asked if I had thought any more about Angela's proposal. I said Philip was still reviewing it. He said he hoped I understood they were just trying to help. I said I appreciated that. Angela sent one text message. It said, only, "The offer on the lake house expires end of month. Just letting you know." I read it once and put my phone face down on the counter. On the 23rd day after the dinner, Philip called me. He had finished the review. The numbers were not pretty. Over 6 years, including the below-market rent, the car lease, the monthly transfers, and several direct payments I had made toward a kitchen renovation and a vacation I had not been invited on, I had provided Derek and Angela with a total that approached $400,000. Not loans, gifts, in the eyes of the law, because I had never formalized them. Philip also told me something else. He said that in the course of his research, he had spoken to his counterpart at another firm. That counterpart, bound by certain professional constraints, but genuinely troubled by what he knew, had indicated without stating explicitly that Angela had been consulting another attorney about strategies for contesting a will. She had done this before the envelope ever landed on my dinner table. She had been planning this for a long time. I sat with that for an evening. I thought about Derek as a child. The way he used to fall asleep in the car on long drives, and I would carry him inside without waking him. The way he cried at Carol's funeral, genuinely cried, in a way I had not seen from him since he was a boy. I thought about whether I had failed him somehow, whether the ease I had given him had cost him something essential. I thought about Carol, who had worried about exactly that in the last year of her life, who had said to me once very quietly that she hoped Derek knew how to be uncomfortable. I did not arrive at any clean answers. I do not think clean answers exist for questions like that, but I knew what I had to do. Philip and I spent the next 3 weeks working through the details. I updated my will. The lake house, the commercial property, and the condo were placed into a revocable trust with a charitable remainder provision, named for Carol. A reputable family foundation would manage the charitable distributions. Derek was not removed entirely. He would receive a modest inheritance, enough to be meaningful, not enough to be a destination. The condo arrangement would end at the lease's natural termination, in 4 months. I would not renew. The monthly transfers had already stopped, quietly, as of the 1st of the month. I also wrote Derek a letter. Not an accusation, not a list of grievances. I wrote it the way I would have wanted someone to write to me if I had lost my way. I told him what I had found in Angela's document. I told him what Philip had uncovered about the will contest consultation. I told him that I loved him, and that love did not require me to fund a strategy designed to take from me what Carol and I had built together. I told him that the door between us was not closed, but that it required him to walk through it honestly, without Angela's paperwork in his hands. I sealed the letter and mailed it. I did not send a text to announce it was coming. I did not call ahead. Then I waited. I want to tell you about the Tuesday morning 2 weeks after I mailed that letter, because it is the part of this story I return to most often. I was sitting on the back porch with my first cup of coffee. It was early, maybe 6:30. The yard was still gray with morning. A cardinal landed on the fence post at the far end of the garden. The same fence post where Carol had hung a small ceramic bird she bought at a market years ago. The cardinal sat there for a moment, turned its head once, and flew off. My phone rang. It was a number I recognized. Not Derek, not Angela. It was a woman named Susan. Susan had been Angela's closest friend since law school, a fact Angela had mentioned many times over the years as evidence of her own loyalty. Susan and I had met perhaps half a dozen times at various family events. I had always found her straightforward, more so than most people in Angela's circle. Susan said she needed to tell me something, and that she was sorry she had not told me sooner. She said she had known about Angela's plan for nearly 8 months. She had known because Angela had asked for her advice early on, back when it was still in the early stages, and Susan had told her it was wrong and that she would not be part of it. Angela had moved forward anyway. Susan had been trying to decide whether to say something to me ever since. The letter I sent Derek had made the decision for her. She told me that the document at the dinner table had not been the first attempt. There had been an earlier version of the plan that involved a different property. Angela had abandoned it because Philip's reputation in the legal community made her nervous about a direct approach. She told me that Derek knew more than he had let on at dinner. Not everything, but enough. She apologized again. I thanked her. I told her it took courage to make the call, and that I meant that. After I hung up, I sat on the porch for a long time. Derek called that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was 7 minutes long. He said Angela had told him the plan was standard estate planning, and he had believed her because it was easier than asking questions. He said he had been asking those questions now. He was crying by the end of the message. The way people cry when they have looked at themselves clearly for the first time in a while. I listened to that voicemail twice. I called him back the next morning. We talked for a long time. I will not share all of that conversation because some of it belongs only to us. But I will tell you that I told him about the cardinal on the fence post. He remembered the ceramic bird. He remembered his mother buying it. He asked if it was still there. I told him it was. The conversation about Angela was difficult and honest, and I believe it was the first conversation of that kind we had shared in years. He said he needed to do some thinking. I said, I understood. I told him the door was open, and I meant it the way I had meant it in the letter. The trust paperwork was finalized at the end of that month. The condo notice went out on schedule. The monthly transfers did not restart. Angela sent me one final message, 3 weeks after I imagined she had been informed of the new trust structure by whatever attorney she had consulting. The message was long. It described my actions as cruel, as a betrayal of the family, as something Carol would have been ashamed of. It used the word heartless twice. I read it once. I did not respond. There is something I want to say to anyone watching this who was in the position I was in before that dinner. Not the specific position, maybe your situation is different in the details, but the general shape of it. The place where you have given so much for so long that the giving has stopped feeling like generosity and started feeling like an expectation. Where the people you love have arranged their lives around what you provide rather than who you are. You are allowed to stop, not out of anger, not as punishment. You are allowed to stop because what you built belongs to you, because the life you construct after 60 deserves to be protected, because love that only flows in one direction is not a relationship. It is a withdrawal schedule. Carol used to say that the most loving thing you can do for someone is to believe they are capable of standing on their own. She meant it about Derek. I understood it too late. I understand it now. The lake house is mine. I drove up there last weekend. I sat on the dock in the early morning with a cup of coffee and watched the water. It was still in the way my wife would have loved. The tree line reflected perfectly. I thought about her. I thought about Philip, who had done more for me in those weeks than I had words to thank him for. I thought about Susan, who had made a hard call because it was the right thing to do. I thought about Derek and where that long, honest conversation might eventually lead. I sat on that dock for 2 hours. Nobody asked me to sign anything. Nobody told me what the property was worth. It was just the water and the trees and the morning. And it was mine. And it was enough. Tell me something in the comments. If someone you had supported for years presented you with a document designed to take what you had built and your own child sat across the table and said nothing, what would you do? And if you have been through something like this yourself, I want to hear from you. You are not alone.